Allow me to set the scene. It's May of 2010. I have just finished my first year at college, but I was taking an extra month of classes to finish off my science credits. And one consequence of this devotion to my studies / putting off having to move back in with my family for the summer was the campus was mostly empty. All my friends had gone back home and there was really nothing to do except to head to the local GameStop or the outdoor mall 45 minutes away. So for that May, I spent most of my days in my dorm room, studying, playing Persona 4 on the PS2, waiting for the new Kick-Assia episode to come out. Not proud of that, I will admit. But eventually, I got the thought in my head that told me, what the hell, I'll just start One Piece. And from that moment onward, the course of my life was forever altered. I honestly do not know where to start when it comes to describing what the story of Captain Monkey D. Luffy and his band of Straw Hat Pirates means to me personally. When I began that journey some 13 odd years ago, I thought I had left the world of shonen manga back in high school since I fell out of love with Naruto after the time skip and never even bothered with Bleach. However, the decision to watch the then 450 episodes of the One Piece anime was an undertaking I was willing to take. Journeying from Crunchyroll to Hulu to rationing out 72-minute intervals on Mega Video to going back to Hulu and back to Crunchyroll, I was able to catch up right around the Marineford arc when some serious shit was going down. And this of course allowed me to pick up and read ahead to the much awaited time skip arc that was just beginning to take shape. Along with Homestuck and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, One Piece was the fandom discovery I made in 2010 that still impacts me to this day, perhaps even more so. My head is just a fountain of One Piece praise that I need to gush all over any unsuspecting individual. I need to let the world know that I think One Piece is not just a good manga and anime franchise, but one of, if not the biggest works of large-scale fiction of the modern era. It is our Lord of the Rings, our Romance of the Three Kingdoms, a story whose appeal crosses international boundaries and demographics. And, of all times, this is the perfect moment to do a video about One Piece. Not only has its popularity exploded in recent years, going from a distant third when it was part of the big three of shonen to probably the true spiritual successor of Dragon Ball, but the live-action Netflix adaptation being better than expected is also allowing the series to reach a brand new crop of fans outside the realm of anime. If we're still talking about it by the time this video goes up. Netflix dropping the whole series in one big chunk can ultimately prove to be very unkind to the zeitgeist. Ahem. But what exactly could I talk about? I've wanted to do a One Piece video for so long that I'm almost paralyzed by choice. I could do a video about why you should get into the series, but there's no shortage of those. I could do a top 10 list of my favorite story arcs or favorite openings. I could even share some of my most deranged theories that I've cooked up over the years. But then I remembered that this show is primarily focused on classic anime and its history. And though the anime may have started back in the 20th century, it's still going, making it ineligible for this show technically. But it turns out, we can go back a little earlier. Before the Netflix show, before the blockbuster movies, before the gold statues, before the ice dancing performances, before the exceptionally animated Insta-Ramen commercials, we're going back to that brief moment in time when the manga had just started, but the anime had yet to be born. We're going back to the exact moment when One Piece became a franchise.
幾人もの海賊たちが旗を掲げ、戦い、名を上げた時代。それが大海賊時代である。
KYOTO ビデオ。
てめえ、よくも俺とシャンクスの誓いの帽子を。
シャンクス、赤髪のシャンクスのことか。
そうだ。
すると貴様も海賊なのか。
Okay, so the story of One Piece, for the few of you who don't know, is that aspiring pirate Monkey D. Luffy wishes to follow in the footsteps of his childhood hero, the legendary pirate Red Hair Shanks, and become a pirate. But not just any pirate. He wants to surpass Shanks and become the King of the Pirates, a title that can only be attained by seeking out the treasure of the legendary Gold Roger, which he left at the end of the long and treacherous stretch of sea known as the Grand Line. But Luffy can't achieve this dream on just a dream. He'll need a ship and a crew to help navigate the Grand Line and find the eponymous One Piece. And of course, he'll also have his superpower that gives his body the property of rubber. How did that happen?
Yo ho ho, he took a bite of gum gum.
Okay, to the season One Piece veteran, that whole summary was just scratching the surface of the series. The whole beginning part is just a mere drop in the story's vast ocean. But for today's subject, that's all you really need to know. One Piece, Defeat the Pirate Ganzack, is one of the more under-discussed parts of the One Piece franchise, but it's also one of the more important parts of it as well. It's a red-letter milestone, if any, because this short film marks the first time One Piece was ever animated. On July 26, 1998, after the manga had been in publication for exactly 1 year plus 1 week, One Piece got its first anime. And while the real anime that most associate with the franchise would not appear until next year, Defeat the Pirate Ganzack remains an integral part of the path towards One Piece's place as a global franchise. Is Ganzack a good anime by itself? Well, kind of, but what we really want to examine is its place in history, how it came to be, and how it could have easily been an alternate path the One Piece anime could have taken. To me, that's what makes Ganzack the peculiar artifact that it is. It is the lost poneglyph to One Piece's true history. Leave behind the compass because it's only going to slow us down. We are on a cruise to find out Defeat the Pirate Ganzack's true place in One Piece history. The story of One Piece really begins on January 1st, 1975, with the birth of Eiichiro Oda in Kumamoto, Japan. At an early age, he made a vow to himself to become a great mangaka, all just so he could avoid having to get a real job. His earliest artistic inspirations were Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball series and Yurei Tamago's wrestling manga Kinnikuman, which he was such a big fan of that he submitted a fan character to the author called Panda Man. But what really inspired him the most was the popular children's TV anime Vicky the Viking. Centered around a young Viking boy, whose name is also the title, Vicky the Viking balanced being both a humorous comedy and a high-flying adventure on the high seas, with Vicky having to use his brain to help out a small village of Flock that is constantly preyed on by the devious Viking pirate Sven the Terrible. It was the anime that got Oda deeply into, not Vikings, but pirates. Most of his childhood was spent reading and researching the history of piracy and the famous figures that partook in it. At age 17, Oda was preparing to graduate high school when he submitted his first manga one-shot, Wanted, to Shonen Jump. It was a 31-page story about a high-bounty criminal whose bounty is only that high because he kills the people after him in self-defense. It really caught on with the Shonen Jump brass, netting several awards and a job as an assistant at Weekly Shonen Jump. At Weekly Shonen Jump, Oda worked under numerous masters, such as Shinobu Kaitani, Masaya Tokuhiro, who ended up being a huge influence on Oda's developing art style, and the writer of famed samurai manga Rurouni Kenshin, whom we're not going to talk about thanks to certain deeds. During his days as an assistant, Oda worked on and perfected his one-shot manga stories. One in particular he seemed especially focused on, Romance Dawn. This was an idea he had been sketching out since junior high school. It was going to be a pirate-themed manga centered around a character named Monkey D. Luffy, who wishes to become the greatest pirate of all time and surpass his friend and mentor, Red-Haired Shanks. The most important trait he has combat-wise is his rubber abilities, which he has gained from eating the Gomu Gomu fruit. Overall, kind of the same premise that I talked about several pages ago, but this was published into 2 separate versions with Oda making tweaks along the way. The first version, published in Shonen Jump's 1996 Summer Special on August 4th, is a one-shot about Luffy teaming up with a young swordswoman named Silk to take out a fearsome pirate known as Crescent Moon Galley. While it did have a lot that made it into the final comic, such as Shanks losing his arm to save Luffy and giving him the iconic straw hat afterwards, it also has a lot of unnecessary jargon about the types of pirates that thankfully did not make it into the comics proper. According to Oda, this version of Romance Dawn was published in the wrong magazine since the summer special was meant for newcomers and Oda had already published several one-shots at that point. Romance Dawn was actually supposed to be slated for Jump's regular issue. This allowed him to put out a new version of the story a month later. The second version of Romance Dawn had a similar story to the first version, Luffy teaming up with a young swordswoman, this time a girl named Anne, to take down another powerful and evil pirate, this time a guy named Spiel the Hexagon, but the tweaks were a little more drastic. Shanks is instead changed to Luffy's grandpa, who was a former pirate and the one who gave Luffy his straw hat. But the biggest difference that both versions share is that there is no One Piece in the story. Luffy's main motivation for becoming a pirate is just to have as many adventures as possible, which is all well and good for a one-shot, but for a serialized manga, not so much. You do need some end goal in mind to keep the readers interested every week. By the next year, on July 19th, 1997, the One Piece manga finally entered serialization. By this point, Oda made many more changes to suit the Romance Dawn stories for serialization, not just the addition of the One Piece plot point to act as an end goal, but also splitting the young swordswoman character into two distinct characters. The swordsman aspect becoming the de facto second-in-command, Roronoa Zoro, and the young woman aspect becoming the navigator Nami. Originally, Oda wanted to have the manga just go for 5 years, but boy, wasn't I supposed to be talking about an anime here? Okay, moving on. In 1998, for Shonen Jump's 30th anniversary, publisher Shueisha set up a film festival featuring 3 pilot films for 3 potential anime series: Hunter x Hunter, Sekimatsu leader Deng Takeshi, and of course, One Piece. Hunter x Hunter, adapted from the Yoshihiro Togashi manga of the same name, is practically its own video considering its history and also being a shonen property with a huge impact on me. Sekimatsu leader Den Takeshi, meanwhile, is the only one of the 3 that didn't get a full anime. It's only noteworthy for being based off the debut manga of future Toriko writer Mitsutoshi Shimabukuro, and 2, having its title character being voiced by Cho, who would go on to voice future Straw Hat Pirate member Brook.
お腹の皮も背中の皮も骸骨だからないんですけどもよ
Defeat the Pirate Ganzack is noteworthy not just for being one of the first animated products of One Piece, but also one of the few One Piece products not animated by Toei Animation. Instead, it was animated by Production IG, which was currently going through a massive organizational change thanks to its successful expansion into other areas of animation. Heading up direction would be Goro Taniguchi. A film school graduate, Taniguchi had decided to enter the animation industry as he had heard that it was impossible to become a director in your 20s for live action, but totally doable for animation. Considering Ganzack was his directorial debut at age 32, mission failed on that front. But until then, he got a lot of necessary experience working for Sunrise, doing storyboards for several Gundam series and King of Braves Galgai Gar. In many ways, this One Piece short wasn't a necessary stepping stone for a long, fruitful directing career for Taniguchi, since he would go on to direct anime like Planetes, Gun X Sword, and most famously, Code Geass. Oda was very interested in the production of the short, to the point of even sitting on voice recordings of the cast. After watching the final product, he gave it a lot of praise, which he detailed in Volume 5 of the manga. In anime, a lot of different professionals come together to produce a single show. Directors, writers, character designers, storyboard artists, art directors, colorists, cinematographers, editors, developers, sound artists, musicians, quality control, sound recorders, workers, producers, animators, voice actors, etc. It's amazing. It makes me want to cry. The final product is fantastic. Luffy and friends' voices, movements, and sounds are even better than I had imagined them. While Defeat the Pirate Ganzack was a success, considering it got picked up for an anime by Toei the very next year, it did not get distributed to stores like normal. A VHS of the short was sent around to people who mailed in applications for a copy from Shonen Jump in a 6-week window at the start of 1999. That's why for a good while, the only copies you could get on the internet were from blurry second generation VHS recordings. However, since Taniguchi was also the director of last year's One Piece film Red, there was a revival screening of the short film on One Piece's official YouTube channel, which is the best it has looked in years. But the screening also had English subs hard-coded in them, so if you want an explanation for that, well, here it is. And I hope you are used to seeing them by now, because we shall be seeing more of them from this point forward. In the grand scheme of things, Defeat the Pirate Ganzack takes place in a really weird place in One Piece's canon, which is unavoidable since it started production not even a year into Oda's run. The Straw Hat crew consists of only 3 members at this point, the OG trio of Luffy, Zoro, and Nami, and by this point they have not even made it to the Grand Line, they have not received their trademark ship, the Going Merry, and they have not even met future Straw Hat members Usopp and Sanji. Because Shonen Jump allowed it to take it slow and develop his narrative and setting like they should, the world of One Piece that we know of has not fully opened up yet. So the story of Defeat the Pirate Ganzack is very simple. It's the default of a typical One Piece story. Straw Hats roll into town, uncover a plot by a villainous pirate or marine who is oppressing the populace, team up with a local resident, knock a bad guy into Kingdom Come, and leave the populace freer and better off. And Defeat the Pirate Ganzack follows that formula to a T. The Straw Hats are adrift on their little dinghy, tired and hungry thanks to Luffy pigging out on their weak supply of rations in just a few short days, and then all of a sudden they are attacked by a giant plesiosaur. In the ensuing skirmish, Luffy falls and almost drowns because the Gomu Gomu fruit's powers takes away your ability to swim, and he washes up on a nearby island. This island being the eponymous Ganzack's HQ, where he has enslaved the populace to build a giant cannon in preparation to take on the Grand Line, and is long overdue for some good old-fashioned home-cooked Straw Hat ass-kicking. And along the way, Luffy and the gang gain the assistance of a spunky young brat by the name of Medica, whose father was one of the many enslaved, and she is willing to do anything to help free him, even team up with other pirates. Because every shonen around this time needed their kid appeal character. Like I said, this is the most basic One Piece story that could ever be told, especially at this point. Zoro and Nami don't even get one-on-one fights as their roles mostly just boil down to holding back the random goons while Luffy faces off against Ganzack. If there is one thing that's interesting from a storytelling standpoint is that this takes place in the part of the story where Nami's devotion to Luffy hasn't been set in stone yet, so she's shown to be very flaky.
邪魔者もいなくなったことだし、お宝でも頂戴しに行こっかな。
ナミ、一人でずらがる気か。
怒鳴らない怒鳴らない。血圧上がっちゃうわよ。
Other than that, everything I can say about the story has already been said above. So what does make this One Piece short worth checking out today? Well, the animation for one. So it's easy to assume that Production IG had to put their best foot forward in adapting this hot newcomer to the scene. It's one of the 2 One Piece media that was animated completely on traditional cells, the other being the first One Piece movie, and I'll be damned if it still doesn't look pretty good in the light of 2023. Yes, it's aged compared to the vibrant digital coloring that would come next year, but the animation itself is a treat to witness. For as basic as the Straw Hat fights are in this special, they are animated with such force and ferocity. Even in this state of seeing the Straw Hats as basic rookies, you feel that they've got a power behind them that other pirates lack. But where the animators really show their mettle is animating Luffy's rubber abilities. The power of the Gomu Gomu fruit gives One Piece a crucial element of its comedy and its action. For comedy, this scene by Yasunori Miyazawa emphasizes the gummy rubberiness of Luffy's body for great comedic effect as he struggles against his bonds. And for action, you have the scene by Yoshihiko Umakoshi. It's a simple gum pistol, but he animates Luffy putting all his strength into it and keel-hauling those nameless pirate goons with it. Just spectacular. But it's not just the animation that makes Ganzack a special piece of One Piece media. What really got my sails aflutter when watching Defeat the Pirate Ganzack was not just the animation, but seeing how different everything is in executing a One Piece anime. I mentioned up at the top that I got into the franchise via the anime first before diving into the manga. A lot of what defines the franchise for me, and most certainly other people out there, are the elements from the anime. The voice actors, the character animation, the bombastic score courtesy of Kohei Tanaka and Shiro Hamaguchi, all things that make One Piece a more complete experience for me. Those elements had yet to manifest during the production of the Ganzack special, so the result is an animated One Piece of a different color. Or to put it more succinctly, it feels like One Piece in Slayer's clothing. Most of this we can once again attribute to the cell animation style, which, as much as I love it, does place this in a moment in time. This can also apply to the music of Toshiya Motomichi. Compared to the sweeping orchestral scores of the Toei anime, the Ganzack special instead opts for a soundtrack that feels standard for a lot of anime released around this time period, more focused on electric guitars and saxophones as a way to pump up the action. Not bad, but just the defaults. But the biggest is the voice cast, which consists of seiyuu who did not go on to provide them the memorable voices of the characters we know and love today. And you know this is going to invite comparison. For Luffy, you have Urara Takano, who's best known for voicing Maria Tachibana from Sakura Wars. For Zoro, you have Wataru Takagi, a pretty storied voice actor best known for playing delinquent types like Eikichi Onizuka and Okuyasu from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. He would also voice future One Piece antagonist Bellamy the Hyena. And for Nami, you have Megumi Toyoguchi, a relative newcomer at the time who would go on to have a massive career voicing girl characters as diverse as Winry from Full Metal Alchemist, to Dawn from Pokemon, to Revi from Black Lagoon.
ごめんねルフィ、私この人とお友達になっちゃったんだ。何？だってすっごいお金持ちなんだもん。
Out of the three, I feel like Takagi ends up sounding the most like Zoro's current voice, Kazuya Nakai. Not too surprising since Nakai also plays delinquent types.
悪いが、お前らの相手はこの俺だ。暇なんだろ。勝負しようぜ。
Toyoguchi, meanwhile, plays Nami a bit too cute in her acting. Nami is supposed to be this wily scoundrel, but she lacks the fire that Akemi Okamura brings to the role.
当然でしょ。ルフィの知り合い？まあね。
海賊専門泥棒の私が今海賊から盗んだんだから。この宝は私のものだって言ってんの。
But the most radical difference between actors to me is Takano's performance as Luffy. It's deeper, but way more boyish, a typical heroic role. Not like the young feral monkey boy energy that current voice actor Mayumi Tanaka brings to the role.
お前なんかにやられるか、この金！俺の墓場って決めるな。ここは俺の死に場所じゃねえ。
And I'll be kicking myself if I don't bring this up, but Production IG got a powerful get in who they got to voice the titular villain, Ganzack. The absolute king of anime villain voices, Norio Wakamoto. By himself, Ganzack is kind of a nothing villain. Just a pure megalomaniacal brute with zero complexity, especially compared to future One Piece baddies. But Wakamoto's performance does make him feel like a credible threat, and it kind of makes me wish he had gotten the chance to voice somebody in the series proper in between cell roles.
ギャンザック様に逆ろうとはこの愚か者どもが
You see all this, right? We are looking at One Piece, but everything looks and sounds completely different. That's what makes this 1998 special short film so fascinating to look at these days. There are some One Piece YouTubers out there who dismiss the anime due to pacing problems and disagreeing with the direction, but that dismissal does not take into account just how much of the anime is tied to what One Piece is now. One Piece the anime still ranks as the highest rated time slot on Fuji TV to this day, which is the reason why it has not gone seasonal, because that would mean giving up that valuable slot. On YouTube, tons of choice highlights from the anime and their memorable opening songs get tons of views. And on streaming, One Piece exists on Crunchyroll, Hulu, and Netflix simultaneously. And the reason why the live action adaptation exists in the first place is because Netflix knows the anime remains a hot global property. Ever since the anime hit the airwaves in 1990, it has been inseparable for how people perceive One Piece. When you are reading the pages of the manga, you can hear the anime voice actors read the lines of the characters, listen to the anime soundtrack play in the background of certain scenes, and visualize the action on the screen in a way that looks at least partially influenced by Toei's anime. And then you have Defeat the Pirate Ganzack, which is a glimpse of another possible version of the One Piece anime. Not a bad one, just a different one. Imagine just how much of these small changes could reverberate through One Piece's future as a franchise. The difference in studio, the difference in soundtrack, the difference in voice actors, the difference in sticking with traditional cell animation a little while longer before making the switch to digital instead of doing it right away. Imagine how much of our perception of One Piece would change with those alterations. At the time I am making this video, One Piece has entered what Oda has said to be its final arc. That's 25 years of story entering its home stretch. The very next year, we have the anime celebrating its 25th anniversary. And while that has gone through its share of showrunners and directors and changes in art style, it still has an overall consistency to make it the perfect companion piece to the manga. Which leaves us with Ganzack, which turned 25 years old this year, making its first steps into greatness. Sure, it's pretty elementary compared to what came afterwards, but it's still worth watching just to see the possibilities of where One Piece could go. And even if it ultimately stayed the same, Defeat the Pirate Ganzack shows us that every rookie needs to start somewhere before it enters its metaphorical grand line. So treasure this odd piece of pirate manga ephemera and bear witness to One Piece's own dawn. Thank you all for watching. If you would like to support KYOTO Video and other Possum-related projects, consider contributing to my Patreon. Each dollar goes towards research, production, and just general making my life a little bit easier funds. You can also support the channel by liking this video, subscribing to this channel, ringing that bell for notifications, and, most importantly, sharing it around to your friends. That's all for now. Tune in next time when this possum gives you more classic state-of-the-art animation.